You are listening to the Worlding Podcast, where we explore the relationship of how we are both, shaping and being shaped by our surroundings. The podcast traces interconnections by inviting each episode's guest to pass on the mic to someone who has influenced their world. And now, here's your host, dance artist Renae Shadler.
Hello friends. Today we travel to Glasgow in Scotland to continue our 7th string figure with my guest Zinzi Buchanan, a non-binary artist working with dance, performance, facilitation and poetry. Zinzi was recommended by Zigma Zacharias, who in the last episode explored grief as a materiality. Now we're continuing that conversation, focusing especially on chronic illness and Zinzi's project, Sick Bed Series, that is by and for people who are sick or that care for the sick. Thanks so much for chatting with us today, Zinzi.
Hi, nice to be here.
To begin, could you tell us a little bit about your surroundings at the moment and what's worlding you from your apartment in Glasgow?
Yeah, sure. I'm sitting, I have these amazing windows. They're really tall and wide, and I'm sitting at a desk in front of them. And I'm in my bedroom, and behind me is my bed, and it's very neatly made today. And I have lots of plants to my left. I've got 3 types of geranium, and they smell incredible. One of them is a rose geranium, and I'm particularly into that smell. And I also love the texture of the leaves, so I touch them a lot and sniff my fingers. Yeah, the sky is grey, and there's quite a lot of activity on this street, even though it's not a very well connected street, but there's still loads of people coming and going and cars. And I have a lot of colour in my room, like so many different colours. I'm really happy with all the colours that I have at the moment. I think they look great.
That's awesome. Wow. Because actually you've spent a lot of time studying what it is to be in bed. This space of perhaps coziness, perhaps feeling disappointed that you're in bed and not somewhere else. Can you talk a little bit about being in bed and how the Sick Bed series kind of generated from this experience?
Yeah, so Sick Bed series was a series of events that I made last year, all in bed, for people to experience in bed. And this began with like a chronic illness that started like coming up to 5 years ago now. And I spent a lot of time numbing myself, actually, for like years at the beginning of this, with like painkillers and other means, and I wasn't really stepping up for life or for myself. And actually, but just not long before the pandemic, I started to think about how I could like move into the world again creatively. And I thought about making art for people like myself that spent a lot of time exhausted and in pain, like chronically ill, or couldn't be present in the world in the way that's expected of like what people might call like functional people. So it was like, for me, a way of connecting and moving things. I felt very stagnant and hopeless. There was a long personal journey before I came to this, and actually the pandemic really helped me to move into this space, because it became like more of a, what do people say, an equal playing field. I don't know whether I'd use that analogy, but I don't have another one. Something where I didn't feel so isolated because I wasn't that much more abnormal like I felt before. So yeah, there was something about that gave me the space to imagine how my world can be shared in the world, if that makes sense.
Totally. I also find it so affirmative in a way and quite generative, because in the Sickbed series, which for people that aren't familiar with it, had many different parts. So there was a stage performance that took place in a theatre, and then there was also talks which people could participate in from bed, and live performances which you could stream from bed. And looking at the stage performance, there were beds on stage and the audience was lying on beds and the action was taking place around them. And I'm really interested in how, Zinzi, you bridged these two worlds, this very personal, often isolated space, or perhaps a space that's shared with your partner or a lover, but very intimate, and put it on stage and allowed people to be in bed just to chill on stage, which as a dance artist myself, I know often when you're on stage and there's lights on you, there is that pressure to perform, which in a way, this push and pull, I can also relate to if you're experiencing chronic fatigue or chronic illness. When you're put in the position to perform or be functioning, as you said, there's also something so violent in that, like so much pressure. So I find it really inspiring that you also allowed audiences to embody that when they were in the piece, just to chill in bed on stage. How were people responding to that proposition?
So yeah, the setup was that there was like 20 beds for audience members to be in, and the bit that you said about the violence of it actually reminded me of one of the things. I am taking myself back to that time. That's why I'm a bit slow, because it feels a long time ago now. That I felt like I'm not a dancer, like I can't be seen. There was fear of judgment. I felt fear of being judged for lacking mobility and, not being able to move like one should according to being a dancer. So there was something about creating a situation where there was me and two other dancers, like to take away the visual sense as the major, what do you call it, the primary sense that is often the case with dance shows, or it has been historically, and although there's so many people that play with this. So when people are lying down in bed and the dancers are moving between the beds, not all the time, just some of the time, and we were also wearing like these long capes made from shower curtains. So there was like you could hear the movement of this like long material because it touched the floor and it sounded. So you could also hear when someone moved past. And the score that we were moving with was to dance without ego. So it was very, very open. The interpretation of this was so open. Like I didn't do anything rigorous. I didn't like rehearse and try and perfect anything. It was really just like how to dance without ego. I know that we all had our own ways of playing with this, but really it was to take away the thing of being judged. And so that was one of the motivations behind having there still being dance and it being a performance for moving bodies that we moved, but that people are in bed and it's over a long period of time and they're horizontal.
Hearing you speak, I think also about the movement of people in beds, like the audience would also have a very embodied experience of rolling over onto their tummy to see something, or sitting up on their like knees cross-legged to see something, or, you know, like you moving a pillow around. In a way, also the audience begin to dance with you.
I can imagine that there was this feeling for people that to shift around in their beds to get a shift of their senses of the space, of the dancers in the space, of the sound in the space, other people in their beds. Yeah, I can imagine that.
Yeah.
It was a bit like a dance from the bed as well.
Maybe I'll try that tonight, actually, when I go to bed. Because, you know, when you're saying like this motivation to move through the chronic illness, initially when I heard you say that, I thought about this pressure to go to work, or this pressure to care for your family that involved getting out of bed. But now hearing you talk about the work, I'm like, maybe a movement is just rolling over. You know, like it becomes a question also of scale, that when the judgment is released of the size of an action or the function of an action, maybe rolling over is enough if you decide what's enough.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, who is to be the judge of what is enough? It definitely is painful when that comes from outside. And then when it comes from being sensed inside yourself, then you know when it's enough. Or that there's like you're not doing something to please another person.
Yeah, totally. Can you talk a little bit about the process of making the work? Because when I look at what the Bed series was and the amount of actions, you have an amazing website. Actually, can you tell listeners the website address?
Yeah, sure. It's sickbedseries.com.
Cool, one word.
Yeah, just no spaces, sickbedseries.com. And it's in English and German.
Yeah, it's super wild to see, actually. It's like so much work, and I think, wow, it's also a lot of output to achieve from this state, and also if people in your team are sick. Can you talk a little bit about how you achieved what was achieved? Like from inside, how was that experience?
So I began the process with I wrote it down on a piece of paper, and I kept coming back to it, which was that my role in this work is to facilitate, which is for me like to make easier or to make possible. So my personal situation of being chronically exhausted and in pain was so that was for myself as well, but also for my collaborators. So the way that I worked with collaborators was from a distance, and it ended up being a sound collage from many different artists. So it's like bringing everybody into a room through sound, because it was COVID and we didn't know at any point whether we might have to, we wouldn't be allowed in the room together anymore. Also, it was something for me about my capacity to be present, that actually it was okay for me to have a day where really all I could do was be in bed and have like a, work with sound for that day, rather than being, preparing my body to be in a rehearsal room with other bodies. So yeah, I decided to do it this way, and I'm not going to lie, there was some tricky aspects to this, and there was definitely some things that I would do differently. It's always very challenging working with a huge team, and I think actually like something reflecting on this whole experience is that people that speak out in whatever way, whether it's through art or writing or as activists on disability and chronic illness, we can learn so much from these people as to how to be in the world in general. And I have learned that from my experience and through connecting to so many other people's experiences, through like coming out of being isolated and connecting to other people that are sharing their work in the world. So that's something for me was like, it was an imperfect thing. I think what came out of it was something very beautiful. I was very lucky to work with incredible artists, a lot of whom are my friends, who also experience chronic illness in many forms. And what I did to begin the process was just held space for them to be curious about something. So I didn't push for anyone to talk about their sickness in detail. Like, it wasn't important that the sickness itself was known, but it was more important to open a space for curiosity. So I worked with people where I would just have an initial chat, a bit like how we're having now, actually, you know, like talking about our worlds. And then holding space for them to research into a particular topic. So we had, like Clay did some research into the body as a time machine and the potential for time travel in the body, and connecting that to sick time, concepts of time that are outside of capitalist time. And then Fire did some research into sleep and sleep deprivation, and how sleep is something that you can see, like, that's taken from people that are exploited in capitalism for the benefit of those that have more luxury, and the luxury of sleep and leisure and rest. And working with like another person, Martina Hefter, who is a caregiver, who is the main primary caregiver for her chronically disabled husband. And so there was so many different experiences, different voices that came into the piece, and the soundscape was like sonically held by samples from Nick's electronic drone choir, which was an absolute dream for me to connect with them, because I knew about them before making this work. They work with healing and collective voice to make sound, and it was perfect for holding this collage of voices together, and the effect that it had on everybody in their beds was amazing.
It also really resonates as you're talking, like, who does the labour? It sounds like a little bit of a tangent, and bear with me. But just as you're talking about, like, making a show, and in a way there's a product involved. You're making a show for stage, there's a date, there's marketing, there's like a deadline that needs to be met. Yeah, I'm curious, I guess, how these structures can be flexible so the labour doesn't stay on the person who is outside of the kind of neuronormative functioning way that systems are created. And it reminds me, I had a project that I was involved in 2019, so pre-pandemic, and I was working with a group from very diverse abilities, and especially close with another creature who was quite severely autistic. And we'd been in this lab together researching for a few days, and I really felt like she was my friend. There was this moment when I was like, I really want to know her name. So I said, like, oh, what's your name? And she squealed, like she went, "Nyeh," and then like ran away, and I didn't see her for a few days. And I felt like really hurt, like, oh, but I wanted to know her name. Like we were going to be friends, you know? And somebody else said, but like, that's your way. Like, your way is knowing a name, but like, maybe she doesn't want to be a name today. Maybe she wants to be a sound. And I thought, oh, okay. And then this person talking to me said, you could also be a sound. And I thought, I really like Renae. Like, I work so hard, you know, like I have a podcast, Renae Shadler's talking, like there's a whole package connected. And he said, that's fine, like be Renae, that's fine. And then I remember I thought about it for a few days, and she came back and we were like working on an installation together. And then she made this sound again, like this, ah, and I went like, and she's like, cool, nice to meet you. And like, it was so, I don't know, this moment of entering into a world that feels discomfort and uncomfortable and that you might not understand, but like the audience on the bed are seeing it in a way that's different, that isn't sitting up in a chair and expecting something to come to them. Or if we can be sounds instead of names to interact with a different type of body or a different type of experience. I don't know if that resonates with you too, but I feel like that's really like in there in what you're proposing, Zinzi. Like, how can we meet each other differently?
Yeah, I like listening to this story about you meeting this person in this, finding how you could meet each other, made me think about how grateful I am for my experience in the world of being in relationship to people that are neurodiverse. Like, I have a neurodiverse cousin, and my dad works with people with learning difficulties. So there's something that I find really sad about how like segregated society is, and so that the normies, like people that like operate in manage to operate according to the codes that we are expected to operate by, are not necessarily not able to meet others and themselves in ways outside of those codes. And like more and more, like with my own experience of, I guess for me, like my idea of health being shattered and being like, oh, actually, I am not immune from being chronically ill, and I'm not immune from being dysfunctional in this society. Has meant that I've like really reflected on how grateful I am for my world being open to many people's worlds. I feel like you can connect to people, lots of different people, because of that. And I guess that was just something that I reflected on from your story. I don't think that, like, specifically with Sick Bed series, I think I feel like it came from a very tiny seed. Like, I don't think I had any big plan for it. And then, of course, like the expectations of the theatre and the deadline stuff roll in. And, you know, like I kind of go into like, okay, well, I've done this before, I'm going to do it again kind of mode. I have to get it done. It came from, the seed was very honest. And yeah, like I wasn't trying to show anything to the world that was impressive. It was just, how can I live? How can we live? It was really like basic, foundational survival, actually, or like more than survival, like not being just stuck in surviving, moving things.
Yeah, definitely. I also love, Zinzi, the tagline for Sick Bed series. If listeners haven't been to the website yet, if you're not like clicking on it while you're listening, I don't know why not, you should, but if you haven't gotten there yet, the byline is a radical space for and by sickos. And I really had to smile when I read that, because, yeah, what is a sicko for you, Zinzi?
Okay, so I'll say a little bit more before I talk about my own thoughts on it, but I don't know actually. I don't actually know if it is a reappropriated word. Crip is a reappropriated word from the derogatory term cripple, and queer is a reappropriated word from what was used as a negative word towards queer people. And sicko feels a bit like it's in that realm, but I don't actually know. I think it made it feel a little bit lighter, this blurb, and not so heavy and stuck. And I think it's a delicate thing for me to. I think it's one of my life's works is to bring things into the world that are difficult and find a way of doing them that I myself and others don't. I mean, actually, it's not my responsibility, but that it's not to shame. It's to bring them into the world. I'd just be like, these things are here. We are here. And so it's maybe like a little tongue-in-cheek affirmation of sickness. And it also makes me think I wasn't going to bring a quote into this, and it's actually more of a paraphrase because I can't remember the quote. But there's some in Anne Boyer's book, The Undying, which is one of many amazing books that I read by people that write about sickness last year. And she says something along the lines of like, those that are not yet sick will be. You know, it's something that everybody will experience. I would say actually like death is the thing that everyone will experience. Everyone will die. And I guess there is a possibility for everyone will be sick in some way if it's acute. Not everyone will experience chronic sickness, that's true. Some people might die without having had that experience. But most people, if you live into an older age, or if you're not privileged to have all the luxuries of capitalism, if you're the ones labouring at the expense of those that have those things, you will have a massive amount of experience of being chronically ill. So there's something about like immunity. This idea of immunity is an illusion. It's something that we tell ourselves, that those that are privileged enough in like Western society to believe at some point that they might be immune, which is very isolating. What immunity does, it isolates you from understanding human connection, and that we're never not in relation to other people, whether that's through the transmission of feelings or ideas or like worlds, like that they're resonating. We're resonating alongside each other all the time, as well as like bacteria and germs, and someone who's deeply traumatized and the effect that has on everyone that loves them. I think that this is something that maybe at the moment it might feel like too big a topic to go into, but I think that that's the bigger topic that this touches upon.
Totally, how to be with each other and allow that to be what it is, that it doesn't need to be something otherwise and pre-subscribed. There's a lot of allowance from what you say, I feel. Yeah, removing also the pressure of being always well and always functioning, because it's just not true. Like you said, we're often unwell. People get sick, people get COVID, people pass away, people are born. It's very natural in that way. Zinzi, as part of this podcast, I'm asking guests to share a proposition or a task that myself and listeners can experience in our bodies as a way to come a little bit closer to your research and these very dense themes we've talked about today of sickness and what it is to be in bed, and community also, which I would love to embody.
I actually did quite a few somatic experiences as part of Sick Bed series. It was how I found the possibility of like arriving into our separate beds but being together on Zoom for the online talks and the online performances. It was something that I spent a lot of time doing, like tasks for bodies in bed, and it was great. It was so great. I'm actually not going to share one of those today because I had a little think about where I'm at right now, and it feels quite far from me, or I feel like I'm moving on, and I have recently arrived into Scotland, and the reason that I came to live here, there's many things of like needing to make a change, but one of the things was to be closer to the mountains. And what I love about Glasgow is like it's surrounded by, they're not mountains around, but they're like quite impressive hills. And I wanted to do a little exercise for everybody to take a journey. So maybe we can just take a moment wherever you are to just turn off the attentive listening sense, and just if you want to, like, close your eyes and just sense what's going on in your body. Just feel from your toes through your legs, all the way through the pelvis and your organs, through the arms to the top of the head. Just a very like imperfect scan of the body, sensing the fullness of your body and its senses. And I'd like you to go on a journey to a place somewhere in the world that you have felt a feeling of humility. And I would recommend choosing somewhere that wasn't of human design. So perhaps it is a mountain range, or the edge of land looking at the ocean, or a desert, or the sky, or a forest. And just take yourself towards that place. So imagine yourself moving. You might be gliding like you're in a dream, or really walking and feeling your feet step one foot in front of the other until you arrive. And this place is right there in front of you. And just take a moment to remember and feel the presence of this place. Close your eyes in the place and feel what this place feels like. Now take a second to meet this place. So I'm going to tell you where I am. I'm at the edge of Loch Lomond in Scotland, and this loch, which is a Scottish word for lake, is surrounded by mountains, big mountains with snowy tops. And I am going to make a sound to meet this space. So my sound will go deep under the water and high to the peaks of the mountains, and maybe into the rock and the water itself. So just take a moment to come back to your place and feel the presence of yourself and this place, and make that sound to meet that place. Can be anything. It might be multiple sounds. And now come back to where you are. So you're in your space, whatever. I imagine right now, if you're listening to a podcast, that you are in a room, but you might also be walking with headphones in, or driving. And now just take a moment to invite that place that you were just in into the space that you're in, into the room. And let that space or place that you're in become just a tiny dot as part of this place. So it might be a piece of rock or a pinch of sand or a drop of water.
Wow.
And welcome back to wherever you are from that experience.
It really makes me tingle because I really had I felt like also talking about sick bed series, and especially the stage work, thinking about all the things that you were sharing that were happening while audience members were on the beds, and like the time traveling and sleep deprivation and people moving without ego. I was really kind of, like you said, collaging a little bit, like things became very thick. And now through this proposition, I went to the beach in Australia. It's my favourite beach. It's very basic beach, like a city beach, but it's where I grew up. And I have a stone here. And so then when you kind of dreamed it into my current space, I thought like, oh yeah, this stone is perfect. Like it also breaks down into sand, and maybe it was formed by the sand in Australia and it's here in Berlin. And then I thought, actually, maybe this is a great thing to do multiple times. Like I look around my room, and as you were saying, you have so many colours in your room at the start of the podcast, and I have lots of pastels actually. So I was like, oh, the green of the couch could be somewhere else in the world. And you know, like you can start to really layer worlds within worlds, which is very exciting actually, and very playful.
Do you want to go back to the beach and I go to the mountains and we make our sounds at the same time?
Yeah.
Do you want to try it?
Okay, but can we ask listeners, if you're in a space that feels comfortable, maybe you could also do this with us, wherever you are or were, and the sounds. That would be really beautiful, yeah?
Yeah, great.
Okay, will you count us in, Zinzi, or it's just like free flow?
I'm just going to take us back to the place. Okay, and then I'll shortly guide us. So just take a moment to go back to the place that you were just in and feel the presence of it. It's a place where you have felt humility. And taking away the visual sense, just feel the presence of this space. And you're going to make a sound to meet this place. So after 3, 1, 2, 3.
There's something so exciting as well about people doing this at different times. Like we're recording it a few weeks before it goes online, and then I have a friend at the moment with a small child who listens to the podcast while she's breastfeeding, and I can imagine her doing it in a few weeks, and you know, that people can pick it up at all different moments.
Yeah, it's great. I also was like, I sound like I'm doing whale sound. Yeah, it's a great. I would love to do this with so many people. And I wanted to say a little bit more about this visualization practice, which is something that's new for me, and it's definitely stemmed from being chronically ill. Is that I trained to be a death doula last year, and part of the practice in the training is to facilitate guided visualizations for people that can't go to places anymore. So it's people at the very end of their lives, although you might try and do it multiple times so that people can keep going back to places if they want to go back there, or go to different places that they can no longer go to. So you ask people questions, like as many questions, like tell me more about that, or tell me, what does it smell like? What sounds are there? Like, are you there alone? Do you have company? So you try and get as much information so that you can create this visualization for somebody, and then you facilitate that for somebody. So I think about, like, when you can't get out of bed, or you're dying, you can't move, and you can't go to that waterfall, or if for whatever reason, that the imagination is such a great tool, but that actually we really need others to support us in that imagining. It's very hard to do that alone. We can find ways, but it's so great to have someone that can hold space for you to imagine and to go there with you. Where I've come from this sickbed series is also to things that it's not necessarily art, but it comes from a place of making things possible, like facilitating things, to like the most real life experience of dying.
Yeah, it's a huge one.
And I think it's also great for people that live, like for you living in Germany, and you connect into a place in Australia, and like how visualization can be such a great tool for people that live in this like highly globalized world, to be able to go to places that we can't actually go to.
I also really love how things create a web together. Just also, as you mentioned, dying, and how being a death doula is influencing your work at the moment. It also speaks to Sigma, who recorded with us last episode, and with Ali Bishop in Series 6, who has an episode on sleep in the constitutions of world, like how sleep is an active agent in creation, whereas it's usually not seen that way. It's usually the doing that is the agent or the driving force. I really love that altogether, actually, there's a community being formed. Yeah, so thank you so much for contributing to the world and community. And I look forward to bringing different worlds into my room, and also rolling over in my bed and seeing what a micro movement can do.
Thank you, Renae. It was such a pleasure to talk to you.
Yeah. Before you go, Series 7 isn't quite finished yet. You're recommending someone for us to continue this string figure with. Who have you lined up to speak with us next?
I have invited Natal Igor Dobkin to join you in the Next Worlding podcast. And he is a fantastic artist who lives in Berlin. And the reason why I invited Igor is because I'm most inspired, or I most connect with artists that make art about real life experience. And Igor is an educator and an artist who does workshops and teaches people about queer performance, and has done like social work before. That's why I chose Igor. I'm really excited for it.
Yeah, me too. Thanks so much, Zinzi. And listeners, please check out sickbedseries.com. I'm going to go there now. And yeah, we stay in touch till the next episode. And all the best, Zinzi. I'm curious to continue following your work. It's been a real pleasure.
You too, Renae. Thank you so much.
Thank you for listening to the Worlding Podcast. Gefördert durch die Beauftragte der Bundesregierung für Kultur und Medien im Programm NEUSTART Kultur. Hilfsprogramm des Tanzen des Dachverband Tanz Deutschland.